Yo, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about how to survive rising Facebook ad costs. So I got 5 tips for you, not necessarily in any particular order. So you're going to want to make sure that you actually hear all 5 of these tips because you don't know which one is going to be the one that actually helps you survive these rising ad costs. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Dwayne Gaddis. This channel is all about list building and getting you paid. So if you're into that sort of thing, make sure to smash that subscribe button. But let's go ahead and get right into these 5 tips so that way you can get out there and keep crushing it on your Facebook ads. So we all know that ad costs are going up, right? It's not really a secret, but just because ad costs are going up, it doesn't mean that you can't make money and still be profitable running your online business or whatever, offline business, whatever it is you're doing. You just got to know how to navigate these tricky waters, okay? And that's really what we're going to do in this particular video, is tell you how to navigate all of those kind of minefields out there and stuff like that, because there's really a big opportunity since so many people are actually leaving Facebook. So if you can figure it out, you may be the last man or woman standing. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this. Tip number 1 is to utilize retargeting. Now, you may already be familiar with that term, or maybe it's new to you. So let me explain exactly what it means, and this might be a refresher for some. But retargeting is this. Retargeting is when you put a pixel on your website or funnel, and when somebody lands on the page or opts in or takes a specific action, when they go back into Facebook, you are going to now show them different ads based on the action that they took. So you targeted them the first time when they were a cold audience, and now you are targeting them again, aka retargeting them as a warm audience with different creative and different messaging specific to the action that they took before. And you've probably experienced this all the time. You know, I hear commercials for this web browser called I think it's called DuckDuckGo.com. And their big thing is, hey, you can browse the internet without being stalked by sales companies and all these other places based on what you do. And what they're really trying to appeal to is the people who don't want to see essentially retargeting ads, right? So that's what that's all about. The way that you leverage this to survive rising ad costs is that instead of constantly only fishing in cold audiences, now you can actually fish in warm audiences and continue to nurture and grow those people and get them to convert. All right, so tip number 2, and this one could go either way. And that's why before I even get into the tip, I'm going to tell you something. It is super important that before you start running ads, that you actually have a budget or some type of plan in mind. Because I remember when I first started running ads, I just got so excited and I thought that it was just something where I was going to log into the ads manager and just start spending $50 or $100 a day or whatever it is. Even if your budget's 10 or 20, you need to make sure that you have a plan, and everything that you do, you're doing it with forward intent in mind. Meaning, what is the desired outcome and end game with the action that I'm going to take? And in this case, it's running ads. Because if you just log into the account manager and you just start doing $20, $50 in this and all of that stuff without actually planning it, you're going to run into so many problems. And the first problem is that it's going to actually feel more like gambling than it is taking a strategic, calculated approach, because you'll be too emotional. You'll start wanting to, if something's not working right away, you're going to start trying to change the budget amount, change this, change that, change. You're going to make all of these changes, and you're never really going to be able to buy enough data to move you closer to the result. So you got to always remember that every time you start over and start doing all of these different changes and tweaks and stuff like that, you're going to have to restart buying data again. And if you're really in the early stages and you don't really have much pixel data, data is your friend. Data is the most valuable commodity there is these days. All right, so just keep that in mind, especially with what I'm going to tell you on these next 2. So this is tip number 2, and tip number 2 is you either want to, because this can go either way, you either want to tighten up your targeting demographics, or you want to loosen them. And whichever direction you go is heavily based on your industry. So because it's a bidding system, it's going to be industry or niche specific what type of results you see. In some niches, you're going to want to open up your demographics. So for example, let's say if you're targeting based on age, instead of say going from say 25 to 35 or maybe 35 to 45, you may want to open that to 25 to 45. Or depending on your niche, you may want to shrink that down into smaller pools, say 25 to 34 and then 35 to 44 and 44 up or something like that, to see if you start getting better results and lower your cost of acquisition by changing those demographics. So that's tip number 2, test and play with the demographics. And the reason why I went on that whole spiel in the beginning is because you got to have a plan in place, and you got to understand that when you're running ads, you're never losing money. You're buying data, you're buying information. But once you have that information, you got to make good decisions with it. And if you're too emotional, if you're just running ads and pulling the lever like it's a slot machine, you're not going to be locked in enough and know how to use that data that you just paid for. Because some people will say, oh my goodness, I spent $100 and I didn't make any sales. I just lost money. You didn't lose money. You just gained valuable intel. Now what you do with that intel will determine if that $100 was well spent or if that $100 was absolutely just flushed down the toilet. Okay, so that's number 2. Let's go ahead and talk about number 3. And tip number 3 is, all right, so tip number 3 is to get rid of unengaging content and move on from underperforming interest. So, and some of this may be a little bit over your head. You know, if you're super new to Facebook ads, you may not know what interest targeting is. You probably just want to, YouTube and find a video on that. But essentially what interest targeting is that you can pick different things that your target audience is interested in that relates to what it is that you market. So for example, for me, my target audience is interested in Russell Brunson. And so I may be running ads on Facebook targeting people who have liked either a page or a post or something related to Russell Brunson, or the Facebook algorithm just believes that this person likes Russell Brunson or may like Russell Brunson. So they're going to put my ad in front of that person. So what happens is of course ad costs go up, and there's a lot of different factors in that. One of them could be that potentially, in my case, Russell Brunson may be a very popular targeting demographic because people may want to get in front of his people. And there are other brands and entities and different things that you can target on Facebook, these interests as they call them, that are very similar. And so that's where, again, you got to have your plan. And you got to be able to take a look at your data. And you don't need to be a data whiz or an expert. You just need to know enough so that you can either turn that button on or off. That's it, right? So you're going to look at those different interests, look at the different content, things like that, that's either performing or not performing on those interests. And you want to go ahead and move on from the interests that are not performing. So those could be the interests that have a higher ad cost. Or they could be interests that maybe it costs you a higher customer acquisition cost, but on the back end, that person renews more. So you may want to up the budget there. And maybe there's another interest target where it's less expensive to get the client, but then they don't renew or they don't buy upsells or different things like that. And so that's where, again, you just want to have a plan, know what you're looking at, and be able to do that. But that's tip number 3, is to move on from underperforming interest that aren't generating the type of returns that you're looking for. And now tip number 4 is that you want to diversify the type of creative that you're using. And so there's a lot of different types of creatives. You can use video, you can use GIFs, you can use memes, you can use still images, you can use the carousel. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are diversifying the type of creative you're using So that way you can determine what type of creative your market is responding to the most. And I know a lot of people get kind of spooked when they think about video, and truthfully that's why a lot of people love Facebook, because they can just throw up like a selfie, or especially now that I remember when I first got started with Facebook, they had a limit on how much text could be in a photo, but now that they've removed that, people love to get on and run ads on Facebook and Instagram because they don't have to do a video. They can just throw together a creative, even use all text ads. I've done that. They work pretty well sometimes. But that's the point, is that a lot of people can do that. And so anything that's really easy for people to do inherently creates a logjam in the marketplace, because anyone can just take a selfie or put together a creative or go on Canva and type in Facebook ads and then just make a couple tweaks and then throw it into the ads manager and start driving traffic. So what you want to do to make sure that you're protecting yourself against rising ad costs is to diversify the type of creatives that you're using. That way you can try to attract different parts of the market based on what they like. Some people like video, some people like plain text, and some people want to see GIFs, some people want to laugh because of memes, whatever it is. And that's just going to allow you to be able to cast a wider net, and then really to identify what's truly performing and what's not. So that's tip number 4, diversify your creatives. All right, tip number 5, and this is the final tip. And by the way, if you got any value out of this video, make sure to smash that like button and let me know in the comments, like, what are some of the tips and things that you do to lower ad cost on your Facebook ads campaigns. All right, so anyways, let's keep it moving. Tip number 5 is to use custom audiences. Now, custom audiences, what this means in terms of Facebook, and there's a couple of different types. There are custom audiences, which is essentially data that you have collected. So for example, it could be your list that you uploaded. It could be your pixel data and whatnot. So you can use that type of custom audience, which is from the data that you have generated. And then the other type of custom audience is known as a lookalike audience. And these are super, super exciting, because essentially what you're doing is this. And before I even tell you what you're doing, I'm going to use this to kind of go back to what I said in the earlier tip, which is, remember, you're never losing money running ads on Facebook. You're buying data. And so here's another reason why that's important when we get into lookalike audiences. So a lookalike audience is essentially when you take all of that data that you have purchased from Facebook and you say to Facebook, hey, find me 1 million people or 2 million people or 3 million people that are like this group, and show my ads to those million or 2 million people. This is super powerful. This is actually one of the ways that a lot of the big time marketers and companies scale and just get so big and get just crazy returns, because they're leveraging all of those data points on Facebook, creating these lookalike audiences. And so let me also give you another example and explain to you why this is so powerful. Imagine taking a list of 100 buyers or 1,000 buyers or 10,000 buyers, right? People that have frequented your business, that have purchased from you. And think about all of the data points and information that Facebook has on these people. And then you tell Facebook, find 1 million people that are just like all of these buyers. That's what makes custom audiences and lookalike audiences so special and so effective. And so that's a great way for you to lower your ad costs and get some better returns, is simply by utilizing those custom audiences. So there you have it. Those are the 5 tips in terms of how you can survive rising Facebook ad costs. If you like this video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and that like button, and let me hear from you in the comments about what you do to lower your ad costs on Facebook. And also, I'm going to take this brief opportunity here, since you did stay to the end, you're my people. So I want to give you this opportunity to actually join me inside of a private club. It is called the List Builders Club. It is the only community online where you can discover how to build a list with like-minded, aggressive content creators and course creators and coaches and small business owners, where you don't have to worry about people spamming you and DMing you trying to sell you all type of stuff. You literally can get attention, get nurturing, get accountability, get support, and discover how to build your list without any of the headaches and dealing with all of those other groups and other stuff like that on those other platforms. So if you're interested in that, there will be a link in the description below that's going to take you to a landing page where you can check availability, because we do have limited space available in the club, because we want to make sure that it's actually a tight-knit community and not just anybody can get in there. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about it in this video. Thanks again for checking this out, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Peace.